Hi folks, and welcome back to the Star Wars Library, where Star Wars is in print, and we're going back to the newspaper strips today to talk about an odd one, I think. Now, this is running from May 17th to July 25th of 1982, and it's called The Return of Ben Kenobi. And so, just to put this all into perspective of, where we are in the real world timeline, okay? We are 1 year away from Return of the Jedi. We're very, very close to it. We're in 1982. Jedi comes out in May of 83. So we're 2 years past Empire Strikes Back at this point. Marvel is telling the 9 to 12 month period that are in between Empire and Jedi at this point. Later, the Marvel series, or that era that Marvel's in right now, will be then added to with Shadows of the Empire and a few other things, but not that much. So Marvel's telling that gap between Empire and Jedi. The strips are doing the 3 years in between Episode 4 and Episode 5, or A New Hope and Empire. So that's kind of where we're looking at here. So it's kind of strange, I guess, because we've been, going up to Empire and then going on, and now with the newspaper strips, we're going back to pre-Empire. So just to kind of keep that in perspective of kind of where we're at this point. I think another thing to keep in mind is that with this is that everyone knows at this point, again, if you're reading this in publication order, by the time we're here, we know that Obi-Wan Kenobi died in Episode 4. He died on the Death Star. We know, though, that he's still sort of there because, of course, at the end of the film or near the end, we hear him do the infamous, use the Force Luke in Episode 4. And then in Empire Strikes Back, he actually comes back as a ghost. So we know that Obi-Wan's alive. This is where it's kind of hard with this next story because they don't really expect you to be shocked here. It's just kind of a, here you go. Now, the story we're going to be talking about can be found in Classic Star Wars Volume 2, The Rebel Storm. We're actually halfway through the newspaper strips. After this trade, we only have one more, and then we wrap that up. So, it's in there, and it's by Archie Goodwin and Al Williamson. Again, it's in here. So, basically, the story is right after the Night Beast. Luke is starting to really miss Obi-Wan Kenobi. And then suddenly, Obi-Wan Kenobi shows up. And you're like, is this the ghost of Kenobi? No. It is still in continuity that Obi-Wan did not reveal his Force ghost to Luke until Empire Strikes Back. He hears Luke, or Obi-Wan, and obviously in Splinter of the Mind's Eye, he channels Obi-Wan's spirit, but he doesn't actually see Obi-Wan with his eyes again until The Empire Strikes Back. So basically, Vader wants Luke, right? That's kind of Vader's thing right now, or in this era. And so he hires an actor to play Obi-Wan. Yes, he hires an actor to portray Obi-Wan. So the actor looks just like Alec Guinness. They draw him in here very similar to Obi-Wan in the movie. And to show you a picture here, he's known on Wikipedia if you want to go look him up. He's just known as the Obi-Wan Kenobi impersonator, but he actually looks pretty good to me, or similar to him. But basically, it's revealed that the actor had surgery, actual cosmetic surgery to reconstruct his face. He also had some training with Darth Vader, and Vader's he's used that because you think to yourself, Luke cannot be that gullible, right? Well, Vader explains that basically Luke has not learned enough of the Force at this point to sense, someone's true presence or their true identity. So Vader has trained him a bit, so he does have a little bit of the Force. Not a lot. Very, very, very little. And so Luke, basically, what little he can sense, he does sense the Force. So basically, will Luke overcome this trial? Will he find out that this is not the real Obi-Wan Kenobi? You will have to read to find out. Now, This story is a story that I knew existed even as a kid, before I even knew that the newspaper strips were a thing. So you have to remember, I discovered the expanding universe when I was a third grader. That was really when I started to get into it. A little before that, one of the things that I always loved looking at as a kid were these Star Wars visual dictionaries. And this is actually the one I've had since I was a kid. In fact, you can tell because my dad's had to tape it because in fact, even on the inside, my dad has had to tape it because I've just read through these so many times, and oh man, I loved these things. I have the other ones for the prequels as well, but the original trilogy was in here. I believe it was in here, or maybe it was in another guide like this. I cannot remember for the life of me. I checked through here, and I think I remember seeing it. But basically, in one of the little data points here, they actually, or I believe they do, say that Vader hired an actor to portray Obi-Wan Kenobi, but Luke, dealt with it. And it was kind of, as a kid, I'm like, there was a story about that? When was that? Or are they just saying, oh, that happened? It wasn't until a little bit later that I actually got to see these stories play out. So then fast forward to when I was in the 8th grade, I got these two books here. It was The Rise and Fall of Darth Vader and A New Hope, The Life of Luke Skywalker. I've shown this before, not this one. In both of these books, Ryder Wynnum, who writes them, actually puts, and I said this with this book, the Luke Skywalker one, he references and puts in a lot of the newspaper strips. So many of them, actually, that when I did finally read the newspaper strips, I got these as an adult. I got these when I was in college. And when I read them, I was like, hey, I know these stories because they were in here. In both of these stories, they mention the Obi-Wan Kenobi actor. Granted, it goes into it a little bit more, I believe, in the Luke Skywalker one, just because Luke's live in it. But it does mention it in the Darth Vader one. So again, this is really, really cool that these scholastic books for, young adult kids have, a lot of these obscure Star Wars stories in them. I think that's awesome. So here's the thing. Is this an essential read? The question that we always ask on the show. Is this The Return of Ben Kenobi in this trade? Is this a read you must do? Here's the thing. No, it's not essential. But it's not bad either. It may have been exciting at the time, to see Obi-Wan come back and that. But now that there's so many more, Obi-Wan Kenobi stories, this one kind of gets lost in the shuffle. And also technically too, this isn't really Obi-Wan Kenobi. So, and here's the thing, it's okay. It's not bad. But it's never brought up in the expanding universe ever again. So again, unless you count the visual dictionaries, which are more about the movie, in these, but these are just a passing reference. And these are the only two books that I can think of that mention it. So anyways, it's up to you if you want to read it or not. So folks, thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you next time with another episode of the Star Wars Library.